The good news is we're all in this together. And when we see we're together, we can work things out. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Energy Week with George Harvey and the famous Tom Fennell.
In the flesh.
True philanthropist. Tom goes around and helps people. I want to mention, by the way, before we go on, I posted on this video, if somebody's going to watch this online, a link to Joseph Mangum's
Good. Well, tell us what it is.
Crowdfunding for Joseph Mangum is a local solar installer, and we mentioned him I think last week, and he has a crowdfunding campaign to set up a solar system for somebody in Puerto Rico.
Well, his wife's from Puerto Rico.
His wife is from Puerto Rico, and the system could conceivably go to her family. I don't know where she lives. If she lives in San Juan, it's quite possible that the system would arrive after her family's got power. But anyway, I posted that, so if you have the ability to get to the materials, the links and so forth, for the show that usually go up, there is a link for those people who watch this online.
So if you donate to this cause, it's going to go to Puerto Rico.
It's going to go to Joseph Mangum's
family. Connections.
It's going to go to his crowdfunding, which is on a GoFundMe site, and he's trying to get, I think it's $20,000 to build a system in Puerto Rico. It will go into a system in Puerto Rico. Okay, for whoever gets it. Every day I get up early. Today it was actually 3:30. This is a product not of my desire to produce a blog. It's because I'm 71 years old. I get up early, and having nothing better to do with my life, I go online and spend about 4 or 5 hours going through news. I try to get it all together by 9 o'clock in the morning so that I can go about other business. But I go through news searches, and I put together, when I come across news items that I think are interesting, I put together a short synopsis, 50 or 55 words of each, and then I link to the original article. If I'm lucky, I can just copy the first paragraph. And these go up on a blog, which is geoharvey.com, geoharvey.com. And Tom and I will tell you what date the stories that we're talking about comes from. The first one we're going to do today is on Thursday, October 12th, which is a week ago today from the day that we're recording this.
By the way, if I feel some of these stories are particularly compelling, I'll try to notify you that.
Yeah.
Some of these are well worth looking at. They're just too long for us to deal with.
In the last week, and this is kind of hard to say, knowing that, the World Wildlife Fund scientists I've talked to have told me we're losing another species every 10 minutes. And
it's going fast.
Some of the today, and this is not something that we're talking about today, but we will talk about it next week. The scientists in Germany said that we have lost 75% of our flying insect population. Now that's in the sites that, I think it was 40 sites that they kept track on in Germany over
That's 30. Butterflies, bees, and flies, and everything in between.
Everything you can imagine. And we some of these insects we don't particularly like. People look at houseflies and they say, what are those for? Well, a housefly looks a lot like a flower fly. Mm-hmm. And a flower fly, a slightly different color, is an important pollinator. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of these insects that we really love, the monarch butterflies. I've seen 2 monarch butterflies, maybe 3 this summer.
They're scarce around here now.
They sure are, and they were among the most common insects around, not that long ago. And this is a serious problem. It's not just the bees and the monarch butterflies, it's everything. We have a problem, and we've got people who are denying that the problem exists, and some of them are doing it for pay. So anyway, we should probably get started.
Yeah, we got a picture coming up.
If you
here.
go to the blog and you click on the calendar, you can get to what we've got here. This article comes from a site called Gears of Biz.
Okay, there's the picture.
There's the picture.
And, come on, you. There we go.
Tom is having a little trouble with his mouse.
Mouse, go away. Air-breathing battery could cut costs of renewable energy storage. And I don't think that picture is the battery, but if it is,
I think that's the
it's
battery.
really got me mystified.
Yeah, well, it's pretty mystifying.
It's a pretty mystifying battery. It's
Yeah,
very radical departure.
This story came from a bunch of different sites. Gears of Biz was the one that I chose, and they all had pictures of that battery.
Did they? So that must be
that
it.
thing. So I think it's it. MIT
Take another
researchers.
quick picture of it.
Yeah,
That is a
and you just look at
strange-looking
that.
thing.
Look at that, and you can understand how a little boy or girl would be attracted to research in chemistry. This looks like a child's toy. MIT researchers have developed an air-breathing battery that could store electricity for very long periods of time at about 1/5 the cost of current technologies, with minimal location restraints and zero emissions. Well, it's not zero emissions. It emits high oxygen, but that's not a toxic emission. Systems that could store electricity for multiple days to entire seasons would cost about $20 to $30 per kilowatt hour of storage capacity. And $20 to $30 is mind-boggling. I mean,
That's incredibly low.
it's incredibly low. We're not talking about per kilowatt hour of electricity here. We're talking about per kilowatt hour. I'm looking at my monitor, and my hand looks like Donald Trump's. It's very disturbing. But it's per kilowatt hour of storage capacity. And since this is a rechargeable
it sounds
battery,
like the same thing, but it's not.
it's not. And $20 to $30 is 10% of the price of current batteries. They're saying a fifth, but in the article. But it's if you're going to talk about huge storage capacity, this is very, very, very low
This has
cost.
tremendous potential.
Yeah, I think it does.
Well, you've heard me say I'm fascinated by batteries, and the biggest
Yeah.
reason is in college we didn't study batteries.
Yeah.
They hadn't changed for 100 years.
Yeah,
And there's been more progress in the last 10
yeah,
than there was in the previous 100.
yeah,
And some very clever people like this guy
yeah.
are coming up with some very interesting solutions.
Very interesting solutions. Really, really, really interesting solutions. It'll be interesting to see where this goes. If it goes with like a lot of inventions that have come along, it'll probably just never be heard of. We have another one. This is from Clean Technica.
Withdrawing the Clean Power Plan won't bring back coal.
Oh,
You're going to be hearing a lot about coal from us.
There were 2 times in the last week I broke out laughing, and this might have been one of them. I don't remember. EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt's decision to withdraw the Obama-era Clean Power Plan is intended as a sign to coal miners that the war on coal is over, and that's in quotes, the war on coal is over. Nevertheless, experts are confident that the repeal will not bring coal back, and a number of states are continuing to move forward with their own climate initiatives. And I mean, it's like Scott Pruitt said, the war on coal is over.
Well, I
And
got a quote here this is all about. Really.
yeah,
I think this was Scott Pruitt's quote.
yeah,
Okay, we are committed to righting the wrongs of the Obama
Oh.
administration by cleaning the regulatory slate.
well,
It has nothing
he
to do
says
with
the wa-
reality other than they don't like Obama.
yeah, the regulatory I mean, this is for a party which ran on the idea that they were not going to pick winners and losers. They're picking winners and losers. They really are.
That's called situation ethics.
Yeah, right. And it was just one after another. And we're going to hear about this more this week.
As a result, this is again a quote. I don't know who made it, but it wasn't Pruitt. As a result of this cynical move, power plants will continue to have the right to emit unlimited amounts of carbon pollution in the atmosphere, free from any federal
But
regulation.
the power plants are closing down. I mean, the utilities.
Well, economics is going to do it.
Well, yeah, and the utilities are just closing these plants down one after another. We have something, I think it was last week. I said there's no coal burning plants being built in the United States.
Yeah,
You said you thought there was
as
one.
well, yeah.
I think there's actually 4 that have some kind of regulatory process that's going on to let them be built. But I don't think any of them is actually under construction. There was one that a utility had spent over $30 million on, and they said, we're giving up on it.
We've talked about that.
Yeah,
one. Yeah.
but
that was down in Georgia, I think, or
something.
South Carolina.
But they have 1,600 megawatts on the books, and they've got 13,500 megawatts scheduled to close in 2018. And a day
very well balanced.
and a day or two after Pruitt said we're abandoning the clean power plant, Luminant, which is a big utility in Texas, said, "Oh well, we're planning to close 2,500 megawatts of coal burning plants in Texas
I think we'll
in
be
the
talking
early
about that.
months of 2018." So anyway, yeah. Okay, should we go
Okay,
on?
we got another image
We
coming
do
up
indeed.
here. Let's get this one up.
This is from NASDAQ, which is, of course, people who follow the stock market know NASDAQ as a market.
And that's an interesting solar farm because it's
Yes.
in the middle of a lake.
Yes.
China to boost energy storage capacity to fuel renewable power use. Duh.
Yeah. China aims to boost its large-scale energy storage capacity in the next decade, the government's central planner said in a major push to deal with stranded renewable energy in the west of the country. China generated 5.9 trillion kilowatt hours of power in 2016, of which 25.
That's a million gigawatt hours.
Yeah, that's a lot
That's
of
a
power.
lot of a gigawatt. A lot of power.
That'll keep your flashlight going for infinity. Of which, don't quote me at that, please. Of which 25.6% came from hydro, wind, nuclear, and solar power stations.
They know what's going on. You don't have to pay for fuel.
China is pulling out of it ahead of the United States so much. It's crazy. And
Well, it seems
Donald
that their
Trump,
government is a little bit more efficient than ours.
I don't know if their
You
government,
know, they can
people,
rule by decree if they want.
well, there are a lot of people who say that socialist systems don't work as well as capitalist systems.
Well, this is not socialism and it's not capitalism.
I
It's
know.
a little bit of both.
The system that we've got in the United States under Donald Trump, I think, is much closer to socialism than it was under Obama.
Different kind of socialism.
It's a different
but
kind.
yes,
We've talked
yes.
about this. You privatize the profits and socialize the risks. So we don't have equal possession of the means of production. All we've got is equal possession of the downtime and the problems it generates. Should we go on, or do you have more to say?
Let's move on here.
Okay, we're up to Friday, October 13th, and here's a nice picture, which is about a story from
I got a picture here.
Yeah, Keene,
So
New
good.
Hampshire. This is from Renewables Now, and as a matter of fact, the last line in this story is a reference to a story in Green Energy Times, which I write for, and it happens that the story that they refer to is one that I wrote.
Oh, that's good.
It's kind of fun.
You skipped one. We'll go back
Did
to
I?
it. Yeah, but let's talk about this one. Because this is an interesting article. It's local news. They even mentioned the Brattleboro Food Co-op in the area.
Oh, you know what? This is from ilsr.org. Yeah, we can return to the other one.
We'll
I'm
go
sorry.
back to renewables. Yeah. Pioneering community solar in a Granite State. So this is an interesting article.
It is
It's a long
indeed.
article.
It's from Keene, which
fun,
is just across the river and a few miles from here. Legal and regulatory roadblocks forced solar advocates in Keene, New Hampshire, to develop a comprehensive framework for adding a 43 kilowatt, it's not a huge system, rooftop array on the Monadnock Food Co-op, whose focus on sustainability and downtime locations made it a natural partner. And
I've been in the Keene Co-op quite a few times.
Yeah.
It's a nice little store. It's smaller than our co-op. But,
yeah, well, it's also smaller, I think, than the rooftop array that they have at our co-op. We had a roof.
We have, well, I'll mention that because
Yeah.
this is from the article. The Keen Effort borrows from the Brattleboro Co-op,
Yeah.
which installed a 30 kilowatt array on its roof to supply it with local clean energy.
Okay, so
They're 43, we're 30.
yeah, so their thing is actually bigger. That picture, by the way, is not. I don't think is the Monadnock Co-op.
No, it's not.
I think that actually comes from.
I don't know where it is. But
I think it's in
definitely-
Canada.
It's definitely not on somebody's
Yeah.
roof.
Yeah, you can very often tell sort of where these things are, but the angle of those panels indicates to me that they're probably panels that are intended to pick up light at low angles, because I don't think you'd get that much snow, and even if you did, you wouldn't have a child dressed like that
It's low angle.
in
That's an
a
interesting
place
point.
really
Yeah.
far to the south of
Yeah.
us. And that's what I would expect to see as an angle for something in
that's a
Cuba.
Good guess. That's a good guess. It does point out something that you rarely hear.
Yeah.
That you do have to take care of the solar panels. You got to keep
Yeah.
them clean.
I
and
see.
if it snows, they ain't going to give you no power.
I see pictures over and over and over again as I do my research of huge solar arrays in India that have guys walking through them with squeegees
Yeah, they clean them.
to clean them off.
Well,
yeah.
if you're in a sandy desert, they're going to get covered with
And the
with
sandy
sand.
desert is where they like to put these things.
Well, it makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
So and it provides work.
Okay.
You
Yep.
know,
It does.
These guys are running out with the squeegees.
Yep. Okay.
I'm a squeegee guy, squeegee man.
Do you want to go to the NASDAQ article
let's
now?
go back to. Let's see which. Yeah,
It was NASDAQ, China.
Clean Technical.
No, this is.
Oh, the next one.
It's below the floating array. It's
Here we go.
it's
Here we
this
go. This
particular
is renewables
item.
now.
Yeah, this is. Wait a minute.
We did.
Renewables now. I'm sorry. You're right. Okay, this is still Friday, October 13th.
We have
and
to
I'm-
stop fighting like this.
I suppose might be good.
SoCal Gas and NREL, you'll find out soon who they are, install a bioreactor for pilot power-to-gas project. This is an interesting project.
It really is. Southern California Gas Company and the DOE's National Renewable Energy Laboratory, that's NREL, installed a bioreactor to test power-to-gas technology as a way to store excess renewable power. In the facility, renewable energy produces hydrogen, and archaea microorganisms in a bioreactor consume the hydrogen and carbon dioxide, which guess where that comes from, to produce methane. So
We've
basically,
kind of talked about this process already.
what you're doing is
before.
you're taking the from the air or from the stack of a gas powered.
You're getting CO2 from wherever.
You're getting it from wherever. You could get CO2 that is generated by in a plant that is making wine.
Sure,
Because
absolutely.
breaking down that's one of the things that happens. All that stuff. If you make wine or beer at home and you have air
Well,
traps,
that's the fizz in carbonated.
that's the fizz and carbonated stuff. There are places in California where there's a lot of carbon dioxide in the air because they
They make a lot of
brew
wine.
a lot of wine, and you could take
Or they
that.
burn a lot of forests.
Oh dear.
That's
Okay.
something else again.
Yeah.
Well, there's a quick takeaway here, and it's
Yes.
significant.
Yes.
Power-to-gas technology can significantly boost the amount of renewable energy utilized,
Yes.
and noted that it relies on existing infrastructure. As it relies on existing infrastructure, it can hold excess renewables for days, weeks, or months,
Yes. Or
So-
years.
or
I mean,
even years. yeah.
Again,
So they can suck this stuff up and save it till they need it.
Yes, that's right. And
Interesting things. I mean,
it's
just
interesting things.
More,
What do you do?
More people are looking at this stuff and coming up with ideas.
One of the big problems with solar and wind is not, I think, the fact that they're intermittent. It's the fact that they're going to produce power that you might not want.
Well, it is.
And of course, it's the same.
It may be a big problem. It may be a big opportunity.
It's a big opportunity. And the same thing happens with baseload power plants like nuclear and coal and natural gas.
Well, they're running all night when they don't need to be.
Exactly, and
You can't shut them off.
You can't shut them off, and you have to do something with the power. So historically, what they've done is they've tried to talk people into living at night.
To the extent that they can.
Yeah.
Well,
So the factories are open
storage
at night.
and stuff like that.
The pumped storage, yeah. Okay, should we go on?
We'll move down to the
Energy
far
storage.
south here.
Yeah, far south?
Far south.
Queensland?
Energy storage news.
Yeah, Queensland.
Queensland, that's pretty far south.
It's also far east or far west, depending upon which way you want to go. Okay.
Queensland tender draws 6 gigawatts of energy storage, 6.4 gigawatts of solar PV project proposals. So they were asking for proposals. Boy, didn't they get them.
Yes, indeed. Queensland tender for 400 megawatts of large-scale renewables and 100 of energy storage has received 115 proposals from 79 different entities with a wide range of technologies. These proposals included 2.2 gigawatts of wind, 6.4 gigawatts of solar, and 500 megawatts of other renewable energy technologies, and 6 gigawatts of energy storage proposals. So, I mean, they've got more, clearly, you know, they're only going to be able to take a tiny fraction of what people are offering.
One of the things that's happening in Queensland is without government interference, people are putting solars on the roof.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, at certain times of the day, there's a surplus of power in the grid.
Yes.
So what are they going to do with it? You know, this is part of the answer.
And one of the things that's unfortunate for the utilities in that area is that those times of day when they have that surplus on the grid are traditionally the times of day when the spot cost of electricity is the highest. So the utilities have to...
The energy's coming on when the utilities need it, but the utilities can't charge a premium for it.
No. And in fact, you know, there are places where the spot price of wholesale price of power goes to zero during the daytime when the demand is highest. And they don't
They're
like
not
that.
accustomed to that. No.
They don't like that.
Well, spot power can be very expensive.
Oh, yeah.
And
absolutely.
if they can charge for it, they will.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we're up to Saturday,
There's a
October 14th.
quick takeaway here,
Okay.
because this is important for what's going on here. The integration of storage with renewables is the future. Okay, and particularly important to enable renewable energy to be dispatched into the market when it is required.
Tom, they've been watching our show. Okay, we're up to Saturday, October 14th.
We've got a picture coming up here.
We do
too,
indeed, and we have an item from a publication called Common Dreams.
Common Dream, I like the name of that, yeah.
Yeah.
Promoting renewable future, solar companies and nonprofits rush to Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
So that's about what's going on down there.
Congress has approved a loan of nearly $5 billion that will further burden the already bankrupt U.S. territory of Puerto Rico. But various solar companies and nonprofits are continuing to work together to offer aid to the storm-ravaged island while also promoting a more sustainable future and a resilient energy system.
Well, what's happening here, I think, is what the big guys in the industry don't want to happen. I think they were hoping the government would rebuild their grid and privatize it.
Yeah.
And instead, they're kind of eliminating the grid. They're putting up all these small independent people like you just mentioned, and like, what's his name, Elon Musk.
Elon Musk.
And a few others are coming down here. What did Elon Musk do? He sent down 125
hundreds of his
motor
batteries.
generators, not motor generators, that's solar power battery.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about this is Tesla never said, you know, we have a solar panel subsidiary and we're sending those solar panels. They said we're sending batteries, and they never said where the solar panels were coming from. And I tried doing research on this, and it was only after some time that I realized Puerto Rico has a lot of solar panels, and they're mostly in utility scale systems and on people's rooftops, but they're tied to the grid, and they don't work because they're tied to the grid. The grid is down.
So the panels are there already.
The panels are there. They don't.
okay.
They didn't. In many cases,
many cases,
they
yeah.
probably need lots more panels. But in many cases,
Yeah.
the panels were already there. What they needed was batteries and other infrastructure so that they could make these things into microgrids. So Tesla's got not just batteries, but people on the ground who are actually putting this all together. And you remember that the governor of Puerto Rico said it'll take 8 months or something like that to get the grid back together? He's
Yeah.
saying that by the end of December, which is, 10 weeks away, as opposed to 8 months, he expects that 85% of the people in Puerto Rico will have electrical power. And the articles that I've read about that talk about the U.S. Army bringing in diesel generating sets, which is a problem because they don't have the roads to deliver diesel oil.
I was going to say they don't have the oil.
But clearly, there's also all of these big solar companies. The big Sonnen is another battery company which is talking about putting batteries in Puerto Rico. I'd be
Who is?
Sonnen Battery, it's a
Okay.
German company, but they've got an American subsidiary. And I would be surprised if companies like EOS, for example, aren't talking about delivering their battery systems in Puerto Rico and setting things up. And you don't need to have a lot of this stuff before a lot of the grid can be isolated into microgrids and tied together with batteries and solar power and wind turbines, because they're talking about that too,
Whoa.
and get the whole thing going.
The whole island is surrounded by the trade winds.
Yes.
The easterly trade winds go right over Puerto Rico.
And if you look at the economics of Puerto Rico, the idea that they should be importing oil to burn
doesn't make sense.
doesn't make sense. It's mind-boggling.
Well, it doesn't make sense to you and me, but it makes sense to the guy who's selling them the oil.
Yeah, well, the mind-boggling thing about this is that half the people in the United States are unaware of the fact that Puerto Rico is an American territory and its people are American citizens.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And Donald Trump is doing this to American citizens.
Yeah.
Okay, you live in Vermont, worry about what happens if we're going to have a bad storm, because if he's going to treat Puerto Rico that way, why would he bail out Vermont? Vermonters don't like him. Why would he bail them out? As a matter of fact, if you live in Oklahoma, you got the same problem. He says to Puerto Rico, hey, you caused this problem. The Hurricane Maria came, it's your fault.
Yeah. Why don't you move your whole island out of the way?
Yeah. I mean, we have, I don't want to get into it. We have to talk about power.
Well, one thing I think that's happening inadvertently is the island's new power system, when it's finally finished, is going to be so far superior to the old system. I mean, they're going to be the most modern power system in the world.
Well, they'll certainly be the most modern power system in the United States. I don't know about comparing them with China or India,
Well,
or other
they're up,
backward
they
companies.
will be up there for sure.
Countries.
And that's a good thing.
Yeah, I've worked with Puerto Ricans. I had a crew
Yeah, you've told
that I
me that.
worked
Yeah,
with
yeah.
in a chemical plant,
Yeah.
which was the best crew I've ever seen.
Yeah, you've told me that.
They were so productive. Okay.
We shall
they
move on.
were, by the way, people who all came from the same farming community in Puerto Rico. They all knew each
So
other.
they knew each other, yeah.
They knew how to organize. They organized like Amish. They got together. They had their own guy who was a young guy. I don't think he was 20 years old, but he was.
But he knew how to get the job
He
done.
knew. Well, he knew he had graduated from a high school in New Jersey.
Okay.
He knew how to speak English very well, which not all of them did. He was a great translator, but he also had a really, really fine mind for organizing. And he would just tell these guys, you do this, you do this, you do this. And in 4 hours, they'd have an 8-hour shift's work done. And then they'd clean up. And they left the place immaculate every night. Okay.
Interesting.
We are up to Saturday, October 14th.
Are we there already?
We are. And we have an item from, I'm sorry,
That
we
one
just
was
had
fun.
an item
Yeah,
from
that one
Common
was fun.
Dreams.
So we got another one
Okay,
from Saturday.
okay.
And this one says, this is also very interesting.
Yep.
California outlaws gas-fired peaker plants.
Yeah,
We were
oh
just
my
talking
gosh.
about peaker plants.
Yeah, we were. This is from solarpaces.org. California has put its utilities on notice. When you're putting together your next integrated resource plans, you'd better have non-gas generating options for meeting peak demand. That's what Governor Jerry Brown mandated to utilities when he signed SB 338 into law, requiring that peak loads be met by alternatives to fossil fuels. And you know, this is one of the things that I haven't seen in the news. I just haven't seen in the news. But in research, I found this. It's available to anybody. It comes from the Energy Information Administration. It's right there in their Electric Power Monthly. You go to section 1.1 in the Electric Power Monthly, which is a generalized section for generation. In every one of the last 12 months, generation from natural gas is down from what it was in the same month a year before.
Now that's interesting.
And it's down by an average of over 10%.
That's even more interesting.
This is a serious recession that's going on in this little section of the natural gas industry.
Uh-huh.
And nobody's talking about it, but it's there. And you can look it up, you know. Anyway, should we go to the next item?
Yeah, let's move
This
on
is from
to
the
next
Washington
one here.
Examiner.
Wind, we already talked about wind and coal power, or coal
Yep.
power.
Yep.
Wind power to overtake coal power in Texas.
Here you go. Wind energy is expected
Texas.
Wind energy is expected to overtake coal in Texas. News that two large coal-fired power plants are set to close early next year. Nobody knew these were going to close until Scott Pruitt made his announcement about the Clean Power Plan being abandoned. And here we've got a utility firm, Luminant, which is a big utility, announced it would close the Sando power plant and the Big Brown power plant in early 2018. This is not all that far away. The plants have a combined capacity of 2,300 megawatts, enough to power 2.1 million Texas homes.
Well, 2,300 megawatts is about 4 Yankees.
Yeah, it's about 4 Vermont Yankees.
Yeah. Wow.
And, you know, there it is. And this is, yeah, he's going to abandon the Clean Power Plan, and the Texas utility is going to abandon him.
So they're not related.
They'd already made this decision.
Yeah, they made the decision.
You know, but it's
interesting to see how these things are transpiring.
And they didn't rethink this. They didn't even pause. They just said, sorry, here you go. Okay, we're up to Sunday, October 15th, and we've got a picture here. Yeah, this is a good one. It comes from the St. Cloud Times, which is in Minnesota.
Clean energy provides jobs boom in the state, and of course they're talking about Minnesota.
Clean energy, but nationally
also.
also.
Quick look at this picture first.
Yeah. Okay.
This is a specially seeded with a pollinator habitat.
Yeah.
So we have been seeing already that there are people coming up with crops that grow well under solar.
Yeah, and
this is one of them.
This is something that, you know, there are these people who are against anything that you've talked about this. You say somebody's going to get together and say no, let's not. And they say we don't want Vermont agricultural land to be used for solar, utility scale solar farms. Okay, I'm going to read this and then we can comment on that. The Clean Energy Economy Minnesota released an analysis showing that Minnesota gained 2,892 jobs, clean energy jobs, over the last year, a growth rate almost 4 times faster than the rest of the economy. The clean energy sector now employs over 57,000 people in Minnesota. It employs a greater percentage of the people in Vermont. But here,
these are good jobs.
These are good jobs.
These are not sleazy jobs.
No, they're not. Let's go back to that picture. What has happened here is that the Prairie Restorations, Inc., which is a nonprofit, has seeded this with pollinators. And one of the big problems
looks sort of like yellow daisies, huh?
Yeah, these are
black-eyed Susans.
Black-eyed Susans, probably. And basically what happens here is, if you want to compare this solar array, which may be a utility scale solar array, I don't know. It may be smaller than that. But if you want to compare, this with a conventional cornfield, which apparently these people who are against utility scale solar power don't mind conventional cornfields. Well, a conventional cornfield is an ecological desert that happens.
Disaster.
It's a disaster. It happens to have dark soil, very likely. Could be black soil, but that doesn't mean anything except that you're going to be looking at mud 8 months out of the year if you happen to live across the street from it. But that soil is fertilized with chemicals,
yes.
And then they put fungicides and insecticides and herbicides onto
all
that
sorts
stuff.
Of bad stuff.
All sorts of humanicides if you really look closely at them. So
humanicide.
you've got
I've never heard that word.
Yeah,
before.
well,
yeah.
you've got basically a toxic waste dump across the street from you if you're across from a conventional
It's
grow.
just a pretty one.
It's only pretty when the corn's growing. And listen, I spent enough years in Illinois as a kid living among cornfields that from
They're
my
not
point,
pretty to you.
no, they're not pretty.
And another thing
this
is,
thing is
corn
pretty.
is not a pollinator.
Well,
It's self-pollinated.
it
not need bees
it just
or
blows
flies or,
pollen all over the place and makes people sneeze.
But these plants that they're looking at, these attract bees.
They attract bees and they attract a lot of other pollinators,
Yeah.
which, as we know from that thing that we read earlier in this show, these insects are in trouble. And so, should we go on?
Yeah, let's move on.
We've got an item here from motherboard EN_US.
The U.S. is paying big oil to keep fossil fuels profitable.
This is an article about the kind of sly, slyly put out money that subsidizes fossil
it's
fuels.
been going on for over 100 years.
Zombie oil, this is in quotes, that ought to stay in the ground is being kept alive thanks to federal and state governments feeding it billions of dollars, this study shows. The subsidies are not cash handouts. They're a mix of tax breaks, tax credits, and regulations that forego government revenue, transferring liability, or provide services at below market rates. Well, you give that to somebody and, I don't know.
Well, it's interesting because these guys are complaining about subsidies to renewables.
Yes.
And these guys have been raking in the subsidies for 150 years.
Yes.
These are not new subsidies.
They're not new, but they know how to put together a subsidy package without making it look like it's a subsidy package.
Yeah, that's true.
And it comes to billions of dollars. Currently, the current estimates I've seen are over $4 billion a year in the United States, and the worldwide subsidies are big.
Well, right now, oil is at a relative low. It's $50–$55 a barrel.
Yep.
And that's too low to make a real profit.
In a lot of places,
at least
yes.
on what did they call it? The unconventional oil. They can't touch it anymore.
No, they can't. If they didn't get special tax breaks and things like that, those plants wouldn't exist. Okay, we're up to an item from The Guardian. And
well, this is interesting. Got a nice picture here.
Yes, we do.
Let me pull this up.
Put that up. And believe it or not, that picture is a car that was driven in a race. And yes, it's solar panels on the top.
Well, this is okay. I'll read the headline here.
Yep.
This is the future.
Yeah.
Solar-powered family car hailed by experts. That we're not looking at.
We're not looking at the family car. We're looking at the car that won the race, fastest.
Well, they had two classes.
Yeah.
And this one won
the one that's flat out fast.
This is the Challenger class.
Yeah.
And the other one was the Cruiser class.
Cruiser class.
And they had a four-door family type car won that one.
It looked no more like a family type car than this thing looks like a Porsche. Anyway, a futuristic car that not only uses the sun as power but also supplies energy back to the grid has been hailed as the future as the annual World Solar Challenge wrapped up in Australia. The Dutch entrant Nuna 9 won the race for the third straight time, crossing the finish line after traveling at an average speed of 55.5 miles per hour.
It was an interesting race. If you can picture Australia, right at the very north is Darwin.
Yeah.
And the very south, right in the middle, is Adelaide.
Yeah.
It's sort of like having a race in the United States from Fargo, North Dakota to New Orleans.
Yeah.
You know, and this was the race, so we're right down the middle of Australia.
There you go.
And it must have been fun to watch.
A lot of that is just desert, and it's
Well,
pretty
there's a
dry.
highway.
Yeah, but I mean,
It's all desert.
It's
Yeah, we're in
desert,
the
and
middle
so
of
they had a lot of
Australia.
sunshine during
Alice
the season.
Springs, that's about
Alice
the only
Springs.
thing in there.
Yeah, I've loved Alice Springs since I read the book A Town Like Alice, which, by the way, was made into a great TV show too.
I never heard of it.
Well, it's a really good book, but I can't go into it now. We're, I think, getting behind schedule here. Our next item is from Monday, October 16th, and it comes from Engadget.
Okay. Coal power plant closures ramp up in spite of White House plans. What have we been talking about?
Yeah, the
this
news
whole
of
show?
Illuminant closing coal-burning power plants in Texas poses the expected boosts the expected capacity of 2018 plant closures to over 13,600 megawatts, or a whopping 79% more than the known closings for this year. It is not a record because 18,000 went offline in 2015, but it is clear that the Trump administration claims that their claims that it will save coal are foundering. Coal is a hopeless case.
Well, from the article here, coal ain't coming back soon.
It's not coming back at all.
Coal plants
Ever.
haven't been moneymakers.
No, they're not moneymakers.
The trend is toward more closures, not fewer.
Well, I looked online at the, I think it was the FERC site, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. It might have been EIA, but I remember that what I was seeing was that the closures that are scheduled for next year are more than 10 times greater than or they're about 10 times greater, 8 times greater. They're about 8 times greater. I'm getting my figures jangled than the plants that are seeking to open, and the ones that are seeking to open are basically on hold. Mm-hmm. So
they may never open.
They probably never open.
Probably won't.
Yeah. Okay. Our next item comes from the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, and this is a really interesting picture.
Another picture here.
This is an interesting picture, I think.
What's going on?
That's the inside of a Vestas turbine. These guys are way up at the top. They're in the wind turbine, doing their work in there, doing their...
They call that part the nacelle.
That part is the nacelle,
Yeah.
and they're in there,
Kind of cramped.
Well, I was surprised at how much room there was, to tell you the truth. But I guess people
It's
do
a
have
pretty
to...
big turbine, you can be sure.
Yes, it is. And it's, as I said, from the Minneapolis Star-Tribune.
For clean energy jobs, sky's the limit.
Yeah.
This is a good article. It's long and in depth. You can have fun
And
reading.
it has a bunch of pictures.
Oh yeah, and I think a couple of films.
Yeah, wind technician is the fastest growing occupation in the United States. As utilities rapidly increase the amount of power they get from wind farms, workers who climb hundreds of feet to keep turbines running smoothly are in high demand. Students in Minnesota's wind power training programs sometimes get jobs even before they graduate.
Well, they're much in demand.
They are.
I mean, for one thing, you got to be pretty technically adept.
Yep.
For another thing, you got to want to work 300 feet in the air.
Yeah, and climb a ladder to get there.
It's, these guys sometimes are working on top of these nacelles.
Yes,
know?
and we had that beautiful thing about that
lady
gal,
hanging down.
the lady hanging down
Yeah.
at the end, at the tip of the blade.
Yeah.
Putting fiberglass. Yeah, we should keep going, Tom. I think we're getting
Well, we
too
got
close to the
14
end.
minutes left. So
Yeah, and I think we've got about 7 articles.
we're on Tuesday. So
Yeah, we are still on Monday. We've got an item from Clean Technica about Total.
Total and ERG looking to expedite sale of Italian gas station business.
This is crazy.
Because of investor worries about EVs.
Yeah. France-based energy giant Total, along with partner energy group ERG, E-R-G, is now looking to expedite the sale of Italian gas petrol station network called Total ERG. What a name.
I wonder where they got that name.
but Total ERG? Okay, I wouldn't want to be called that. I don't even know what a person would be calling me. Due to investor worries about the impact of growing electric vehicle market, Total ERG operates about 2,600 gas stations in Italy. That's a lot of stations to get rid of.
So they're dumping them.
They're dumping them.
We've talked about this before, I think. I think it came from Bloomberg.
It might be,
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, Shell is doing stuff where they're dumping gas stations and getting into the EV market. Okay, we are up to Tuesday.
A quick takeaway here is the times they are a-changing.
Yep.
Perhaps it is best to get out of the gas station business while the terms of doing so are still pretty good.
Yes, I agree.
Rats leaving a sinking ship,
Yeah,
huh?
well, what do you expect? Okay, we have another
Tuesday the
picture,
17th,
and this
we got
one
a
is
picture.
from Utility Dive. And we have this is a large solar array in the Southwest. I think that's actually in New Mexico, but
Well, the article's about California.
It sure
but
is.
We don't know where that is, but
yeah,
it's a kind of a pretty picture, though.
It is.
The sky is rather
yeah,
beautiful in this.
yeah.
California solar pilot shows how renewables can provide grid services, and it's an in-depth article. This is an interesting
It is.
article, too.
Increasing amount of renewable energy have sparked worries in the federal government over grid reliability and resilience. But some grid operators are successfully demonstrating that large amounts of intermittent resources can be integrated and sustain system reliability as successfully as, for example, a natural gas plant. And you know, when you consider these things and you consider their opportunities for microgrids and mini grids, these things are far more reliable in terms of their potential than anything that exists today based on coal.
It's interesting because they are.
Yeah.
But they're being attacked for exactly the opposite reason.
Yeah, we've got
These are all solid state. You know, they're all
I know.
being
And
run by computers.
Rick Perry is in you know, he's still
in another world.
He's in another world. He's still in the 19th and the early 20th century. We have to go on, Tom. We do this.
Let's move along.
I get panicked at this point in the story show, and then by the time we're done, we've got a couple of minutes. But hopefully, we'll do it. Okay,
we're coming close.
Arizona
to the end.
Daily
We are coming
Sun.
close to the end.
Arizona Daily Sun.
EPA scraps clean power plan, but utilities still vow lower emissions. This is another good in-depth article.
Arizona had faced some of the nation's steepest emission cuts under the EPA's Clean Power Plan, but Arizona utilities and regulators said they plan to continue working toward lower carbon emission goals that have been set under the plan, even though EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt said this week that the agency is scrapping the program. We're just back to the same old thing. So,
well, as we keep saying, it's the economic aspects that are going to take over.
yeah,
Coal is too expensive to burn anymore,
yeah,
whether or not you're cleaning up the atmosphere.
absolutely. Okay, our next item is from Renews, and we have a picture there.
Got
which
a
is
picture there,
an
which I
extremely
will bring
boring
up.
picture.
Yeah, it's not very exciting.
Not exciting. No.
Batteries could save the Irish $25 million.
Ireland and Northern Ireland have an integrated electric system, and batteries could save that system 19 million euros a year from 2019 to 20 by using battery-based energy storage to stabilize the grid, according to a report from Queen's University in Belfast. It showed that 360 megawatts of battery storage could provide the same fast frequency response as 3 gigawatts of conventional power.
This is what we just talked about.
But it's mind-boggling. It's a
because
small
nobody expected
battery.
It could work this quick.
Yeah, compared to the thing it's replacing, it's a small battery.
Well, again, it's run by a computer.
Yeah, and it's easily run by a computer, and because there's no motors to turn on. There's no boilers to get hot.
It could be run by a laptop. Probably isn't, but it could be.
I would bet that it's not. But anyway, we're up to October 18th,
Well,
which
this is
Wednesday,
so it's the last day. We got 8
and
minutes.
we've got
I think we're going to make it.
We'll probably make
I
it.
think we're going to make it.
And here we have a picture of an AR 1500 turbine at the Maygen Phase 1A site.
Now, that's not a windmill.
No, it's
No,
not.
that's an underwater turbine.
That's an underwater turbine, and I want to point out that if you look at those blades, the tips of the blades are almost parallel to the direction that the water is flowing,
Okay.
which means that that blade is going to turn rather slowly. I always worried about these things chopping fish up, but I don't think they can. And the studies that they've done have looked into questions of, like, do cetaceans come around porpoises and whales and things?
The blade is going to have to adapt to the motion of the water,
Yeah.
which is going to be slow. Basically,
Yeah.
it's going to be going in one direction.
Yep.
The high tide is going to be going the other way.
That's correct.
And in that, 8-hour, 10-hour,
12-hour.
12-hour cycle, the blades are going to turn around.
Yes. Okay. And, so you have a title for this?
Scott's Tidal at full power.
Atlantis Resources has redeployed the fourth and final 1.5 megawatt turbine. That's a 1.5 megawatt turbine. We don't have a good way of knowing how big it is, but at its Maygen Phase 1A...
Is there anybody sitting in there?
No, I don't think so.
We don't have any...
At Pentland Firth, in waters off northern Scotland. Following final completion testing, Maygen Phase 1A is expected to formally complete its construction phase. It could enter into its 25-year operational phase within coming weeks.
I'm looking at an article at a sentence. We'll skip it. It is
Yes, okay. We have our next item from scoop.co.nz, which means that it's coming from New Zealand. The picture I just...
Oh, we got
I popped a picture up, but it's for the next one after this. Yeah.
23 countries and states to phase out coal.
Over a quarter of the 1,675 companies that owned or developed coal-fired power capacity since 2010 have entirely left the coal business, according to a research from Coal Swarm and Greenpeace. This represents nearly 370 large coal-fired power plants and equivalent to nearly $500 billion in assets retired or not developed.
That $500 billion is actually $432 billion, and it's gone.
Yeah,
it's left the industry.
It's left the industry.
They're doing something else with it.
They're doing well in a lot of cases. But we had a story about a year ago about a plant in Belgium, which was like a year and a half old. This was a new coal burning facility, and they closed it because it wasn't able to make money.
Yeah.
Now,
That's what it's all about, isn't it?
What does that tell you about the industry? So why would you put up from emissions that are killing people coming from an industry that is not making money? I mean,
$500 billion of investment money has moved elsewhere.
Yeah. Okay. Should we go on to our next one?
Yeah.
Okay. This is the final article, and it is in the...
We got 5 minutes left, so...
Yeah, well, we can talk about this. That's okay.
World's... we got a picture, too.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we could talk about that picture because it's an interesting picture. This is, when I was a little kid, I was aware of tugboats.
Yeah.
And I was kind of intrigued at the idea of an ocean-going tugboat.
Okay.
And those ocean-going tugboats, when I was a little kid, all looked like the harbor tugboats, except they were much bigger.
Yeah.
But here, in this picture, is an ocean-going tugboat of a modern type.
And that's a pretty big tugboat.
That's a pretty big tugboat. That's right. Yeah. So what's the title on this?
World's first floating wind farm powers up in Scotland.
Yeah, this is an important article. The world's first floating wind farm is being opened up today being probably the 17th or the 16th of October, although the article appeared on the 18th. In waters off the northeast coast of Scotland, the 210 million pound development, that's $277 million, which will be opened by First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, she's in the Scottish government as opposed to the UK government, is a partnership between Masdar, Abu Dhabi's renewable power company, and the Norwegian energy giant Statoil. It will power about 20,000 homes. Now, this is not a big wind farm.
No, but it's significant because they're not anchored to the ground. They're floating.
They're floating.
I mean, they're still anchored with wire.
You could put these things anywhere in the oceans that isn't
Well,
going to
they're
freeze.
starting to talk about the North Atlantic because there's nothing there but wind.
Yeah, they're
There's
talking
plenty
about
of wind.
putting this out in the middle of the North Atlantic Ocean. There's practically no seabirds out there.
Yeah.
There may be birds that get blown by when hurricanes hit, and they get, every once in a while an American robin winds up in the UK
Yeah.
because they're picked up by hurricanes and storms like that and
Tossed
carried
somewhere,
across
yeah.
carried across the ocean, and they survive. And of course, that transocean passage happens fairly quickly a lot of times, particularly in northern altitudes. And when that happens, if the bird can stay up there for a couple of days and nights on end, it will wind up coming to a country where it can land and, live. And I don't know what they do for migration, but they could probably stay in the UK all year round. But the winds that are out there, they're talking about building a huge array out in the middle of the ocean, and you can't do that with anchors going with a turbines going based on the bottom of the ocean. It's too deep. So this and of course there are a lot of places this same technology could be used off the west coast of North America.
Absolutely. And there must be wind out there too.
There's wind out there, and that's important because you could do offshore wind in Northern California or Southern California, and it would have to be practically on the beach because
they have very narrow continental shelf.
They have a very small, very short continental shelf as opposed to the east.
The East Coast is significant. It's large.
It goes a long ways. So this is a development which a lot of countries are looking at, and what's happening here is in fact there was another article about this today. It turns out that it's a lot cheaper. It's about $1 per watt less to build these things in port and then tow them away and put them up out at sea than it is to assemble them at sea.
We've seen that going on too. In Japan, they build them in a shipyard and they tow them out to places.
Yeah, and what happens is that when you do this, it means that offshore wind prices have gone down and down and down and down. Now they're about 60% of the price of nuclear in the UK.
60%.
Yeah.
Wow.
So in terms of the amount of the cost of the electricity that's generated.
Okay.
So
interesting facts here. The turbines can operate in water up to 1 kilometer deep.
It's kind of deep.
That's pretty deep.
Yeah, it is.
Including the blades, the tower is just under 600 feet and weighs 11,500 tons.
So that thing that you're looking at in this picture,
get the picture
is about 60 stories tall, and it probably outweighs the ship that's pulling it by a fair amount. I mean, that 1,100 tons is about the weight of a First World War U.S. destroyer in the Navy.
Uh-huh.
A little bit light for a First World War destroyer, but it's,
So it's about the size of a naval ship.
Yeah,
about
small naval ship.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we are at the end of our hour, so we'll have to say goodbye.
We are at the end of our hour, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. You want to put us up?
I think I will put us up.
Yeah. There you go.
I was just fascinated by the fact that we're at the end of an hour.
Goodbye, everybody.
The good news is we're all in this together. And when we see we're together,